All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you have had a chance to see it today, the G7 in Brussels, and our President Barack Obama and the British Prime Minister David Cameron side by side answering questions earlier, I guess this morning, our time, on a range of issues, a lot of them relating to Vladimir Putin, and they actually gave him kind of a month-long ultimatum. A lot to get to with our next guest, and we welcome in Dr. Liam Fox, a member of the British Parliament for 22 years, former Secretary of State for Defence in the UK, and he is also the author of Rising Tides. And it's so great to see you. Thanks for coming in, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let's start with the current events first. And what did you think of the message from the aforementioned leaders of my country and your country to Vladimir Putin?
Well, I think it's about time. We have a very strong lesson from history that appeasement doesn't have a great track record.
Yes, we do.
And when you look at what's happened in recent years, the fact that Russia cut off Ukraine's gas, which is against the NATO-Russia treaty, the cyber attack on Estonia, the invasion of Georgia, culminating in Ukraine, we've seen a pattern of bad behavior by Russia. We've not done enough in the past to make very clear our displeasure about it. And what really amazes me about the discussions around the Ukraine is that it's not really about the tactical or even the strategic interests of Ukraine itself. It's the fact that Putin has put down a challenge to international law. He's in fact said the protection of ethnic Russians doesn't fall to the countries in which they live or their laws or their constitution or their governments, but to an external power, Russia. That cannot be tolerated, or there will be no international law.
Of course, you could use that excuse, as has been used in the past, obviously, throughout history, to enter just about any country in that region. You mentioned that it's about time, and that up to now the reaction to Putin's aggression has been kind of unacceptable. Why? First of all, what's different about this, and why has it been so tepid going, up to this point? Do you believe?
I think there's been a tendency to replace critical analysis with wishful thinking, hoping that Russia will develop into a more stable partner, a more pluralistic society, a better democratic structure. This is, as I say, wishful thinking, and it's very clear that Russia is not moving in that direction. The Putin regime is a thuggish regime at home. You don't have very much chance in the media if you're an enemy of the Putin regime. And I think that it's now dawned on even the most optimistic Western political figure that this is not going in the direction that we wanted.
Is Barack Obama one of the most optimistic Western political figures you're referring to?
I don't think when it comes to Russia that he's any better or any worse than any other European leaders. I mean, it was under the previous presidency that the invasion of Georgia went without a very strong response. But when you're looking at the actual behavior, I mean, only this week, France is handing over 2 new warships to Russia.
Outrageous.
And that is sending exactly the contrary signal to the one that we are trying to get across to the Russian government.
As far as meeting with Putin, both leaders were asked. I believe the next stop is France, and I know that Barack Obama, basically said no, he had no intention or whatever, and David Cameron was more receptive to that possibility. And Putin has no problem. He said, "I'll meet with anybody." Should they sit down with him?
I think it depends what you're going to say. If it's to reinforce the message that there can be no compromise, that our sanctions are going to be in place and there will be more unless the behavior changes, that's one thing. But there's no room for negotiation, as it were, over Russian behavior. They need to de-escalate, and they need to make very clear that they renounce this idea that they have a complete carte blanche to become involved geographically anywhere where there are ethnic Russians.
David Cameron also addressed the politics of your country and the elections, and said that he's the prime minister of all the people, and he's not going to marginalize people who have gained power, incrementally, and just ignore them and play against them. He's going to govern for all. Where is your country headed politically? What's the future of the European Union? I mean, that's easy question, right? I mean, you got 5 minutes, but what is it? What is
Sounds like to do a 1 hour special on that question. Well, I think what we've had recently in Europe has been a set of elections where a very clear message has gone out from the people of Europe, which is that they do not like the pace or direction of the European Union. The question is whether those whose lives have been totally dedicated to the concept of ever closer union will actually listen. and I don't think there's a great deal of hope that they will. So I think there's a period of instability. The European economy is not in a great place, and it's the inevitable result of European social democracy. The European Union makes up 7% of the global population, 25% of global GDP, and 50% of global social spending. Wow. That is completely unsustainable. Yeah, sure. And there's going to be a lot of pain. And unless we take it now, it means that we're passing debt and further pain on to future generations. That's really not acceptable.
What's your opinion of the deal cut for the release of Sergeant Bergdahl, the trading of the 5 Taliban terrorists to the terrorist network to gain the release of the 1 sergeant?
I think there's a grave danger that we've created a currency, an exchange rate here that will be a precedent that we will find extremely uncomfortable in the future. And of course, were any of these terrorists to commit acts of violence or murder against US citizens or any other Western citizens, this might not be seen in a particularly good light in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You talked about economics. I saw a piece today, which is somewhere around here, talking about negative interest rates. One of the banks in Europe, maybe in your country specifically, is that something that you think is a wise way to go?
Well, what we need is for Europe and indeed the United States to start living within their means. Not building up debt for the next generation. The best way to do that is to see our spending reduced. Mm-hmm. And one of the problems in Europe is that the European economy is very flat, not least because the euro as a project was designed to be a hard currency at whatever expense. And in countries like Spain, you've got 58% youth unemployment. I don't think that that's socially sustainable.
No, absolutely.
And I think those who are congratulating themselves of having done, in their view, such a great job in creating the euro, might want to ask the unemployed citizens of Europe whether they think it's such a good idea.
What do you think of the direction we're heading here in this country economically, the economic policies, whether it's regulation, Obamacare, and the jobs numbers? I mean, the workforce has diminished. That's why the unemployment number has come down. These people are out of the workforce.
The United Kingdom at the moment has the fastest growing economy in Europe because we have purposely sought to shrink the size of the public sector to give the private sector room to grow. And we've seen the fastest job creation
Could I give you the number of the White House switchboard?
It's, I think it's not rocket science. It's very clear that when the government doesn't crowd out the market, it allows innovation, entrepreneurs and the private sector to generate wealth. And part of the problem on both sides of the Atlantic is that politicians don't differentiate between growth and wealth creation.
Yeah, no, good point. All right, Rising Tides, your great new book. I know you're not talking about, as Al Gore once said, that the seas will rise. You're not talking about global warming, so-called. You're talking about something else.
What I'm talking about is how we deal with the new reality of globalization, and how do we try to get our structures of government, which are neat little bureaucratic silos, to understand that you can't disaggregate risk in the new global economy. We've had so many warnings about our level of interdependence, and I'm not sure that politicians get it.
No, well, and a lot of people are afraid when they hear about global economy, global cooperation. They're afraid of a UN takeover. They're afraid of losing sovereignty, losing, the government losing control to an outside agency or entity. You're not talking about that. No. You're just talking about cooperation.
So I think I would turn it right on its head. I would say, in an era of globalization, of rapid change, this is the time that we most want to apply our values to that global system. And I was speaking at Stanford a couple of weeks ago on the case for America. Very odd that it's our Brits having to make the case.
No, that's great. Maybe they didn't throw chairs at you. If a conservative American did it, they would.
And it's very important that we point out that the United States and other Western countries are what we are today because of the values we have. It's not an accident. It's our commitment to rule of law, it's our commitment to individual liberty, and it's our commitment to free markets that have enabled us to get the prosperity that we have. We should want to export those values to others. not so that they become competitors, but because that adds to global stability and is in our own long-term interest.
And you're not talking about forcing this upon a nation that doesn't want, you know, the Bush doctrine of democratizing countries. That's not where you're going. You're talking about a different aspect of
Well,
that.
what we should be doing is to say, this is what has worked for us.
Right.
It's very clear that certain values are better than others. Democracy is better
I agree.
than tyranny.
Yeah.
Giving women equal rights is far better than having them as second-class citizens. And I think we need to have a lot more use of the word better and not just different.
Doctor, a pleasure to see you. The book, folks, is Rising Tides. Dr. Liam Fox, a distinguished member of the British Parliament for over 22 years. And you're seeing the book on the screen right now with his name right up there. And pleasure having you in the studio, sir.
It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you
Thank
very
you.
much. I really appreciate it. All right, folks, when we come back, it's Gimme 5 time. You're not going to want to miss it on the Steve Malzberg Show.